Hey, what's up, people? It's TTC. Today, I'm very excited to be having a look at the Marvel Legends Legacy Collection movie Deadpool figure. You will have seen in my previous hunting video me getting stupidly, properly excited like a child when I found this hanging on the pegs in my local Forbidden Planet. For retail price too, just $24.99. I might not have been clear enough in that video as to why that was so exciting. At least here in the UK, as soon as this was released, it went out of stock immediately everywhere. Could not find it at all. Obviously, all the scalpers had united and whipped them all up for themselves, and they all began appearing on eBay for between 80 and 100 quid, which is obviously ridiculous. And then, of course, that was followed by these terrible Chinese knockoffs that just look absolutely awful. But it wasn't necessarily the end of the world. I knew that the newer version from Deadpool and Wolverine was coming, so I figured, I'll just wait for that. But, of course, a few months pass, it gets released, and boom, can't find it for sale anywhere. And then all of a sudden, all over eBay, cranked right up in price. By that point, I'd basically just given up. Thought I'm never going to find it, I'll just accept that I'm not going to own this one. I wasn't happy, but I'm not in the market for being fleeced out of hundreds of quid by a load of random scalpers on the internet. Couldn't even go for any of the comic book versions of the figures either because they're just as expensive. Just seems to happen with him, he's such a popular character, everybody just buys him up immediately. It's just something about Deadpool. So yeah, to just find him sitting there on the shelf for retail price, and there was like 6 of them as well. Pretty damn exciting for me. It was like the universe went, you know what, it's a miserable rainy day. You've not had any luck, so here you go, here's something nice for you. Treat yourself. I gotta say, now that I've actually got him in hand, I'm a good solid 95% happy with him. He's not perfect, but obviously no figure is. It comes with actually quite a lot of accessories, so let's dive in and have a look at them first. It comes with a ridiculous amount of alternate hands. Like I know they're usually quite good for alternate hands when it comes to Marvel Legends, but there's quite a lot here. It's probably an unnecessary amount, to be honest, some of them you could probably do without. Got these 2 tiny little hands that are sculpted for holding the swords. As you can see, the backs of them are silver, which I believe is how he looked in the second movie. Take note of that because they're not all the same. A couple of pretty similar little fist hands. Work nicely for what they are. As you can see, these 2 are black on the back, which is obviously how we looked in the first movie. A couple of splayed fingers, sort of dramatic gesturing hands with the black on the back. Not really sure what to do with these other than the hands on face sort of Home Alone pose. Then on the figure now there's these 2 sort of trigger finger gun holding hands with the silver on the back. So I suppose the point they were going for is that you can have a look from either the first movie or the second movie. It's not a bad idea. I don't quite think it works out though. It doesn't really make sense because you can't mix and match anything without having 2 hands that are totally different colours from each other. Say you wanted one hand holding a gun and one hand holding a sword or a fist or whatever. It's not going to work out, unfortunately. He's got his tiny little stuffed white unicorn teddy toy. It's quite nicely sculpted. You can clearly see that it is a teddy and not just a little unicorn. It's got just a little bit of paint for the eyes and the horn. I don't really have much to say about this. It'll probably go into my wife's little tiny unicorn collection. And then of course he's got all these different weapons on him. Let's just straighten him out a sec and we'll have a look through them. As you can see in his hands already, he's got these, I'm going to call them Desert Eagle pistols. As you can see there, they fit quite nicely in his little trigger finger hands. He holds them really well. Not going to fall out. I am far from a gun expert, but that looks like a Desert Eagle to me. It's obviously just cast in the sort of black plain plastic, but if you've got Marvel Legends, then that shouldn't be any surprise to you. It's nicely sculpted and it does the job. Can't really think of anything they could have done better, to be honest, so I'm happy with them. They slot very nicely in his little holsters here on his legs, which if you had the original release of this, you'll know that they were actually glued in. A lot of people took little scalpels to cut them out and ended up breaking the gun, so that's one little detail I'm very happy that they fixed. Down here at his ankle sheath, he's got a tiny little baby knife which is wedged right in there. It's very nicely sculpted, but it's a little bit fragile with being this skinny. I'm quite worried about breaking it. You saw how stiff it was in there. I'm probably just going to push it back in. Be very careful with it and just leave it like that because I do not want to break this. Luckily, it looks pretty nice just sitting there in the holster. And then last but not least, he obviously comes with his 2 katanas. These are quite skinny as well. I'm just slightly worried about breaking these 2. As you can see, they've already got just slightly bent, just a little bit warped from putting them in the sheaths. If you look real closely, the sort of wrap around the handle has actually been sculpted on, that's nice. Can't remember if there actually should be any colour, but it would look nice with some. They fit pretty easily just into the sheaths on his back, maybe just have to give it a little bit of a push at the end. It's nice that you can actually store them on the figure, and it looks pretty cool like that. So the most obvious thing straight away is that the red on this costume is quite a lot darker and muted than any other versions of him. I mean, it's fine, it looks good. I think I might have preferred the other version with the lighter red and the gold accents. Let's bring him up close now and have a look at that head sculpt, because I think they absolutely nailed this mask. Look at that. I think they did a sick job of covering it in that sort of basketball texture. Gives it a little bit of dimension, makes it look more real life than just the flatness that you get in a sort of comic book version. The eye parts are really well sculpted, it looks exactly like how the design is supposed to. Maybe they could have done with sculpting some more different, maybe interesting expressions onto the face. You know, maybe some wider eyes, or one wider than the other, or whatever, just to show a bit of character. I personally just prefer it sort of neutral and blank like this. You can put it in any pose you want, then you're not stuck in a specific emotion. But whatever your preference, you can't deny that this is really well sculpted. And no surprise, all the details on his suit are also just like equally nicely sculpted. If you look close enough on his chest, he's got all the little dings and scratches, you know, little bullet holes, because he is constantly getting shot up and stabbed and beaten up in all of these movies. Look closely at his belt, the paintwork is a little bit sloppy. Obviously it's supposed to resemble his mask, which I can see it, it's just not very clean. And down on his legs, they're also all textured and scratched and dinged. Very nicely done. Nice little Deadpool arse there. And then moving up onto the back, he's got the two swords. The only real problem with this, that I'm sure you can see as we're going through it, is that his proportions are a little bit weird. Like, he's very tall, which, fine, maybe Ryan Reynolds is tall. But I want to say skinny, but he's not even skinny, he's just very flat. He's got a very rectangular torso, and then really thin arms. The hands look just a little bit small as well. The black collar thing that he's got on just sort of hides that he's got a pretty long neck too. Definitely weirdly shaped. The sheaths on his back for his katanas are pretty nicely done. They're just plain black plastic. At least they don't have tiny little holes in the end like sometimes sheaths do on figures. It's not actually connected in any way to the strap going around the front. As you can see, this is just a loose piece, and that just pisses me off. I don't really get why Hasbro are obsessed with doing it. It doesn't really hinder any articulation. Like, obviously it moves out of the way of the ab crunch there. But if it was held in place, it still wouldn't get in the way. I'd rather just have it glued down. Maybe that's just my personal preference. Just bloody glue it down. Quite easily get him in some nice, fairly dynamic poses here. Like, the articulation works really well with the sculpt. It's not always the case with Marvel Legends. Sometimes they've got a lot of articulation, and it doesn't actually add anything to it. But now here, it all seems to work pretty nicely. I have obviously got him stood on a little stand here. His feet are a little bit small, so it can get a bit wobbly, but it's mostly because the surface in this review station is not the most stable in the world. So let's go on a bit of a rant here, because I've sort of got a little bit of an issue with how popular this movie version of Deadpool has gotten. I mean, on one hand, I'm quite happy that a character that I'm really fond of has gotten so popular. Keep it out there, so, you know, in the ether. I liked the first movie. I thought they did a really good job of making something actually quite interesting. But the second movie, not so much for me. The humour was just the same humour again. It wasn't really that funny by then, and I could have done without any of the X-Force stuff. Plus, I really wanted to see a proper version of Cable on screen. Come on. And then by the time Deadpool and Wolverine came out, I was sick to death of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. Come on, it's been so long now, I can't be the only person who wants everything rebooting. Let's see some new versions of the X-Men. The Fox ones are done with, they're over. Give me a short Wolverine. I suppose for me, the biggest problem is he isn't very Deadpool anymore. He just basically is Ryan Reynolds now. Obviously, comic book Deadpool also has a stupid, you know, sort of offensive, a bit rude sense of humour, that's fine. But he can also be quite clever, and a lot of the stories are very smartly written, whereas the movies seem to just be going for a lot of, look at my balls. I just feel the character's got a bit more to him than that they're just sort of missing. Don't get me wrong, it's got to have the sense of humour too. But I don't need to see another movie of him shooting people and then teabagging them again and again and again. Alright, let's get back on track now with a couple of size comparisons. Here's the most obvious character to have with him. The astonishing / heat claws version of Wolverine. Probably make a bit more sense to have him stood up straight actually, one second. Obviously one's a live action version and one's a comic book style, but I do think they actually look pretty good together. This is definitely my favourite version of Wolverine. And he's a lot shorter and a lot wider than Deadpool is, so that works quite nicely. And then we're whacking the 80th anniversary Hawkeye as well. These two are actually quite close in size, despite one being live action and one being a comic book version. But I think they actually look pretty good together too. Obviously, depending on where you want them, you can fudge Deadpool into either your X-Men display or your Avengers technically. So I think it's important that he works with all of these. I personally haven't got any problem mixing and matching live action and comic book figures together. For no real reason, here's a 6-inch Dragon Stars Super Saiyan Goku figure. There you go, so for all you internet weirdos who like to go, oh, who'd win in a fight? Come on, Goku would. Like, as much as I'm more of a fan of Deadpool than I am of Dragon Ball, Goku would absolutely f*** him up, mate. And then for another look at my balls type superhero, here's the McFarlane John Cena Peacemaker figure. It'd actually be pretty cool if the MCU did cross over one day with some DC movies. You could have these two together, you know, maybe they could have a competition, see who could be the biggest dickhead. The red on Peacemaker's shirt really highlights how dark the red is on Deadpool. So there you go then, what do people think? For me, as much as I'm definitely starting to get quite bored of this version of Deadpool, I'm still really happy to own this. I am very happy that I was patient and didn't spend any stupid scalper money on this. I even had a chance to buy them off eBay for only about 40 quid and I still stuck to my guns and I waited and it paid off. Just shows, you know, no matter how desperate you get or how badly you want something, don't give in to scalpers. Don't forget to like this video, drop us a comment and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll have plenty more Marvel Legends videos coming soon. I think I'm going to squeeze this Deadpool into my comic book X-Men display, so who knows, maybe I'll do a video of that whole collection at some point. But until then, I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers!